Welcome to Tactical Tuesday, everybody.
Welcome, guys. It is a beautiful day in Edmonton. Hopefully, you guys are having just as much of a beautiful day
We
where
can't
you
say
are.
that often, so I guess we have to when we can, right?
Yeah, it's just a gorgeous day. Hey, Sean, from Whitby. Been wondering about how you're doing. We'll have to check in tonight. Hey guys, welcome. We are talking a little bit about hedging our bets tonight and how are we able to continue to buy with fearlessness, but yet be smart and just be just that one little tick above where we could be if we were just average and just going in with as minimal amount of information as possible.
And the thing about buying real estate, and those of you that own real estate know this, is that there's certain principles we can follow, and if we follow those principles, most of the time, it is going to benefit us if we are following the right principles. But there's nothing that's guaranteed. So sometimes we might follow a certain system, or we might follow. Okay, well, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. Some of the things we're going to talk about today. But even if we do that, sometimes things don't always go right. But the point is if we follow, I don't know, more than one or a certain system, and we look for some things that could possibly help both our property prices to increase, our vacancy to be low, our rents to go up, all of those types of things that helps us as real estate investors, then that's only going to help.
It's only going to help. And we're not talking about big, massive changes, guys. We're just talking about just being a little bit smarter, a little bit more picky about where we do buy. And what it's going to do, it's not going to make massive differences in our portfolios. It's just going to be those little things like we might get renters faster. We might just get our pick of renters. We might just find that we, get, like, we have to do one showing because we have so many options. Little things that don't necessarily change our world or rock our world, but they definitely make investing easier, and it makes it easier for us to stick in for the long term. So that's
I mean, if we can get a 5% extra increase in our value, or if we can get 2% less vacancy than maybe other areas around that we could have bought in, but now our area is a little bit less vacant, or a little bit higher rents, those types of things, that's only going to help us, right? It's going to help us stay in long term. And that's what we've talked about all the time, is that the longer we're in, the more our values go up, our rents go up, our mortgages go down, we become successful as real estate investors.
Awesome. So there's audio but no video for some. We can't see your faces. Interesting.
Screen appears to be blacked out. Okay.
Interesting. Looks fine to us. And where are we streaming? Oh, funny. Should we stop the stream and restart? No.
Hey?
It's kind of funny. Can you see when we say can you
black
see the
screen audio only? That's what we're getting here, I guess.
Oh, weird.
Okay.
So weird. And today we're sitting outside with this finally being able to sit outside.
I'm going to switch cameras. Okay, that's black screen. Now we go back to this camera. Okay, guys, can you let me know if that made any difference? If you can see us.
We gotta close it. Black screen. Weird. Weird. This is like the first time this has ever happened. And which is kind of funny because, of course, we have some slides to show tonight, which would be crazy. Oh, yes. Okay, we're back.
Oh, you can see us now. Wow. Okay, we switched cameras and we came back. So I don't know what happened, but
well, hey, if you can see us,
then that's great.
That's
good
so
now.
Funny.
It's okay now. There
Perfect, you guys. Thanks.
All right.
Okay, so again.
Well, hey guys, thanks for hanging on. 44 viewers, and we weren't even on screen, so that's awesome. So thanks for sticking with us.
Okay, so let's talk about a few things. So we're going to talk about 4 things tonight that we learned early on. This is not our knowledge. This is not, something we came up with. This is stuff that we learned from Don Campbell. Most of you know Don from Marine. Definitely Don was pioneering in this kind of stuff. Carlton Sheets, Harv Ecker. It's kind of funny, like going back to some of the places that we learned these things, but it's not our information, but it's just information that we did implement and that we are happy that we implemented, because again, although it didn't make a massive difference in, that we were noticing every single day, it made enough of a difference that part of why we're able to stand, 18 years into investing and still be standing here. So yeah, it is a bad day, hair day, Sarah. I don't know if you can see, but I have paint in my hair. I was painting at my dad's condo and I actually got primer in my hair and I can't get it out. It doesn't want to come out.
That's not gray.
Anyways,
Sure.
no, the gray is covered with hair dye right now. Thank goodness.
Okay.
All right. Okay, guys. So the first thing we're going to talk about, and this is something that is, whether you were in a small town, big city, doesn't really matter. But the first thing we're going to talk about is transportation changes. So let's talk about, what does that mean? So throw it in the chat, guys.
You've heard us talk about this before.
Yeah. So what are some transportation changes that can affect our real estate that we want to be aware of in the areas that we are investing in? What are some of those changes?
We know, like earlier we were looking at the chat, and there's people from Alberta to BC to Nova Scotia to Ontario, all across the country. And so where you're investing, whether it's where you live or you're investing somewhere else, we want you to start thinking about these things that we're going to be talking about that are happening in the area you're investing in. So for example, transportation changes that Tiff's talking about. Maybe there's an LRT being built.
Yeah, and so that's what we start seeing some of these comments. So LRT, transit, new subway stations. Yes. Hey, Angie, nice to see ya, as always. LRT, changing transit, highway expansions or extensions. So let's talk about some of these things, you guys, because each one of these things actually has an effect on our real estate. Again, doesn't have to be massive, but they do have an effect. Okay, so yeah, an airport. So let's talk about what happened.
Maybe it's not even a new airport being built, but it's a new airline coming into that airport and servicing it. That can absolutely make a difference to real estate in that area.
So what happened in Comox, Courtney? Talk about that for
a minute. A little town on Vancouver Island. I mean, that's one of the things we noticed, I don't know, 8-10 years ago, WestJet decided to start flying into this little town. And now that just opens up the opportunities for, at the time, people from Alberta, people from Vancouver, people from all over BC.
There in an hour.
They can now just fly straight to Comox. They don't have to fly to Victoria or Nanaimo and drive all the way up. What a difference that makes for a small town. So, so for example, think about it. People can go there. They can now fly in and out for work. They can go there for vacation, buy a vacation rental. All of those kinds of things are now a possibility.
Yeah, so the vacation rental industry there, so cabins, okay, so this is a beautiful spot on Vancouver Island, kind of secluded though. It's not in Nanaimo, it's not in Victoria, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, hard to get to. All of a sudden, people from Alberta, so Calgary, oil money, right, could start just have a cabin there for the weekend, fly in and fly out, be there in an hour. And that changed everything. Yeah. So all of a sudden those properties went from being, nobody wanted them to being hot commodities. So it doesn't, like Corey said, it doesn't have to be a new airport. It can just be a new service within it. It doesn't have to be, now we were talking about highway improvements. It doesn't have to be a new highway. Interestingly, crazy if you ask me, the doubling of a highway, just the fact that it's no longer going to be single lane, the doubling of a highway or even a road can make a difference. And why is that, guys? Let's talk about, why do these transportation changes? Yes, new LRT lines, that's huge. Even new bus stops, guys. All of those things make a difference. Why?
Throw it in the chat,
talk
guys.
About it.
What do you think? What effect is it going to have? Why is it a benefit to us as real estate investors if a new highway is built near one of our properties, or if an LRT station is going to be built close to one of our properties, or maybe a new airline is flying into the town that is close to one of our properties? What do you think? Throw it in the chat. What are the benefits for us as real estate investors? Okay. We understand, as somebody that, maybe is living there, okay, well, I can get to the grocery store quicker. I can get to work quicker. But as a real estate investor, how is that going to help us? Okay, throw it in the chat.
So here's one answer: accessibility and time saving. Guys, and this is one thing that Don Campbell always said, and he loves economics and he always followed that stuff. And he said, people don't measure their commute to work in distance, like, oh, I'm 48 kilometers from work or 23 kilometers from work. People don't measure it that way. They measure it in minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
They measure it in minutes. So take a minute. I remember when he used to make us write this down. People measure their commute in minutes, not kilometers. So if you can make them 15 minutes closer to work, if you can make their drive go from an hour and a half in a car to 20 minutes on a rail line, do you think that people will want that real estate? Do you think that you will have renters? Do you think that you'll have the choice and the pick of your renters? Do you think that people would be willing to pay more when they're buying that property off of you, more for it, because of convenience, accessibility? Guys, we want what we want when we want it, right? And so that's part of the transportation changes. So when you're thinking about transportation changes, I want you to think about time saved. Okay. And when you think about that, whether it's a new bus stop, when you think about, airports, expansions, new LRTs, all of those things, if you're saving people time or energy, they're going to be your friend. Okay. So we've had awesome. Thank you guys for throwing all this stuff in the chat. This is amazing. Throw in where of some transportation changes. Now we saw some.
Now that we've been talking about this, like Tiff said, we want your mind to be thinking a little bit and thinking, oh, you know what? Here's the difference, guys, is we might be driving by our properties and the road to get to them might be under construction. We've been working at Tiff's condo for the last, I don't know, couple of weeks. Tiff's dad's condo, I should say. And on the way there, one of the major freeways in Edmonton is being widened. It's being extended from like 2 lanes to 4 lanes each way. And that's a major transportation change. But, as we're driving there, doing the renovation, we're going there every day or every second day, helping them out. We get annoyed. We're like, what the heck? Like, it's taking so much longer to get there. We're stuck in traffic. We got home half an hour before our live started tonight, which it took half an hour longer than it should have. All of these types of things might annoy us, but as real estate investors, we can look at it differently. We can look at it and say, you know what, this might annoy us for right now, but what it's doing to the properties that are down the line here, what it's doing for the properties that I own that are close to this freeway, is it's upping the value of those homes, because now people can live there and get where they want to go so much quicker. It brings everything in the city closer to people. And if everything is closer, what do people look for? They want stuff that's close to them, right? They want to have their amenities around them. And so when these transportation changes happen, it's like physically picking up a property and moving it closer to these amenities, but you don't have to.
Pretty awesome for our tenants and pretty awesome for our property values. So I love this comment. It's like it makes a remote community more like a suburb. So, I don't know if you guys know where, was it Ingersoll? I think it is. In Ontario, when they got their transit line, man, did it boom. We have a little small town not far from here where no, I put it down so that when we have the comments it'll make room. So a little while from here where they had twinned their road. It wasn't even a highway, but it was a road to get from this little small town into Edmonton, and they paid for the twinning of it even though it wasn't their road. But why? Because all of a sudden people want to live there because, hey, it's a quick, easy ride in. There's no traffic. That changed the scape, their real estate. It changed. So Let's talk
So
about Cheryl.
some ideas that have been thrown in here. So
Mhm.
Toronto LRT, Hamilton proposed LRT, e-bike
E-bike
lane
lane.
upgrades. Yeah,
It's a new
yeah.
trend, Chris, that we've got to keep our eyes on as investors. Absolutely.
Adding more
Bike
lanes on the
lanes,
401.
Tori says, yeah.
Yeah, there's LRTs being built in Edmonton and Calgary and like was mentioned, Hamilton. There's probably others, guys. So throw it in the chat if you're starting to think of some of these things that are happening, and maybe we can start to look at them a little differently. Maybe they annoy us because of the construction that's going on, but if we look at it as a real estate investor and maybe look for properties that are close by that will be benefited from it, then that can be of real good value for us.
Okay, so Cheryl mentioned the Hamilton LRT lines that are going in. So, I mean, this is pretty extensive. Ottawa's got an extensive one going on. Calgary does, but this one in Hamilton, guys, this one is the largest infrastructure project that Ontario has ever taken on. Largest infrastructure project that Ontario, the whole province, has ever taken on. I mean, this is huge.
So if something like that does go through, then absolutely, you know, these are the things that we want to look at and download these maps and see where these stations are going to be. And if we can have properties that are close by those, once construction starts, that's the time to be starting to look at properties that
Yes.
are around those.
So good point. So sometimes it's announced and it's all excited, and it's like, woohoo, we're gonna get this. But until there's almost a shovel in the ground, until that funding is there and that pen has signed on the dotted line, we don't want to be speculative, right? We don't want to be jumping in too early, because what if it changes? I mean, we've had all kinds of changes that happen, new government, new whatever. So until that shovel is almost in the ground, you want to just be a little careful. But these are the types of things. And if you look at this map again of Hamilton, for example, this is the kind of stuff, it shows you every single spot that every station is going to be, and it'll tell you whether they're underground or above ground. And we're going to talk about in a minute why that's important, okay? Because there is a distinct difference in how far away you want to be. If it's underground versus above ground, there's different distances.
Well, you don't want to be the house where that has an LRT going right near your second story, right?
Yeah. Do you want to feel the vibration? Do you want your tenants to be feeling that vibration? How about the sound? How about the lights? How about the dust? So there's a lot of considerations. So there's a really awesome article that Julie has ready to just throw in. Oh, there we go. Is that it? Oh, no. She's got the link here, though. But yeah, there's a really good article she's going to throw in the chat, talks about the proximity to underground and on top of. Okay. Yeah. See the Allen Expressway, right? That was huge, huge, huge. Now, what if you had bought just speculating that these things were coming when they hadn't even really been finalized? So let's not do that too early. Let's not speculate. Let's be investors, but let's be aware of the different things that we can. Here's a really good article, guys, that you guys can probably click on. Really interesting information on how all of this stuff works. So let's just quickly, how do I move to the next screen?
Oh, I
Sorry.
can do that for it.
Oh, look at that. Perfect.
Okay.
So again, Calgary. Now, guys, when we are looking at this map, not only do you want to look at the neighborhoods that are directly affected, but we want to talk about next. Oh, can you do that again?
Oh, the next slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Now, who knows what the ripple effect is in real estate? So we see we're looking at a pond, and we see that a drop of water has dropped, boom, right in the middle of the pond. Now, what happens to real estate? Now, that's where, let's say that that's the epicenter, okay? That's where the bomb has dropped and everything is exploding there. Property values are up,
In a good
rents
way.
are up in a good way. Everything's going up. That's where it dropped, was right in the middle. But
so, for example, let's use Vancouver as an example. Okay, so we know that Vancouver is one of the highest priced cities in the world. Real estate has been going up in value there for a decade or more, and the average prices there are well over $1 million, million and a half. I don't know what it is exactly right now, but what then happens to the towns next to Vancouver? And that's the ripple effect that Tiff is talking about, is the towns next to it, a year, 6 months, a year, 2 years later, that starts to spread. You start seeing values starting to go up in Burnaby and Surrey and in all their areas closer to Vancouver. And then a little while longer, it spreads out a little bit farther, maybe as far as farther down the Fraser Valley or into Abbotsford. And then it starts to spread farther. And now you start to see things happening in Kamloops or Kelowna or the Okanagan. And
Or the
so
island.
that's, or over on the island. So that's kind of the ripple effect. When you see a boom happening, or real estate prices going up, really low vacancies, or you start to see rents increasing, it usually happens in the larger centers first. And then what happens is that starts to ripple out to the smaller centers surrounding it.
Yeah. So we're seeing that right now, for example, in the Maritimes. So the Maritimes, let's think big. So we can do this ripple effect in a community, right? So there can be a small area of transition. It can be a block. It can be, a few blocks. It can be a whole neighborhood. It can be a brand new community. And you can see how that ripple effect goes. But Corey talked about how in Vancouver it affected the island. It even affected the Okanagan. What about out east? It can not only when the pin drops in Toronto, sure, it affects, all the way out, all the way to St. Catharines, even Niagara region, all the, London, all these different places. But where else did it affect is the Maritimes. There is a lot of Toronto money in the Maritimes. That is part of the ripple effect. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to buy right in the middle here. Because if we buy where the pin drops, well, we've probably already missed the boat, right? We're buying high. However, if we buy on the outskirts of this picture, maybe 1, 2, 3 rings away, we know the direction that is going. We know where it's going to end up.
Because that wave is on its way, right?
That
And that's
wave
the
is on
same
its
thing
way.
as that rock that you throw in there. You know that it's going to take some time, but over time, that wave keeps spreading.
Yeah. So this is the article, guys, a really interesting article by the economist from McGill, I think, University. But he basically talks about when does it improve property values and when does it not. And it's all about the underground versus above ground stations and stuff. So really, really interesting stuff. So that's the ripple effect. So when you're looking at an area, let's say that you really like an area. Now, one thing you have to remember is that the areas beside it are going to be part of that ripple effect. But here's the tough part about that. In the meantime, they're in the transition stage. They are areas of transition. They are usually a little bit, more downtrodden. They maybe don't have the best tenant demographic. Maybe their rents haven't risen yet. So it's going to be, harder to cash flow. The benefit, it's also going to be cheaper to buy, right? So if you're buying in those areas of transition, just remember you want to buy close to where that pin has dropped. And you want to make sure that you're hedging your bets by adding in a little more reserve fund. You're going to have more vacancy. You're going to have more turnover. You're going to have lower rents for a while until that ripple effect comes to you. Hedge yourself in for longevity.
Be very conservative, right?
Be conservative, yeah. And make sure you've got a healthy reserve fund. That's going to help so many of you guys. All right, there we go. Here's another one. Because of Moncton, Amherst is getting a lot of attention. It's only a half an hour drive between the two cities.
So what other towns, guys, are coming to mind that maybe are close to larger centers that have been doing really well with real estate prices and things like that over the last 5-10 years? What areas are you starting to see that ripple happening where it's spread out? And now these newer areas, these areas a little bit farther out, are starting to take off. are starting to get busy. And sometimes that ripple, like Tiff said, can go province to province. Sometimes it can go from town to town, or sometimes it's neighborhood to neighborhood. I noticed earlier, Urshad, I think, put in something about an NHL arena being built. Yeah, when big
Of
projects
course he
like
did.
that
Of
happen,
course your son
yeah,
said it.
what
That's
a
awesome.
difference it has for the neighborhoods around. I mean, we saw that here in Edmonton when Rogers Place was built. All of the areas around it. I mean, the towers that are going up, and the restaurants that are popping up, and all the residential communities around there are doing extremely well as far as prices are concerned. But it takes a little bit of time for that ripple to occur.
Yeah.
So throw some ideas in the chat, guys. So I see quite a few here. Windsor, yes, absolutely. Durham region. Can't read it when it's covered there.
Conception Bay, for
Okay.
sure, outside of St.
Yeah.
John's. Like,
Yeah.
Sarah is about to buy up Newfoundland. So if any of you guys are interested, you need to connect with Sarah and Patrick, because that fire is burning, and they're in Ontario, but their experience in Ontario is pushing them out east, right? So let's see. The Horseshoe.
Trenton,
Okay.
Belleville,
Trenton, Belleville.
Saskatoon,
Okay.
new arena. That would be good for Saskatoon.
There we
Yeah.
go. Angie and Andrew, another amazing contact for you guys. Saskatchewan, they've been investing there for 10, 12 years. And yeah. So what we want you guys to do is really start thinking outside the box. Melissa, I saw you said something about maybe transportation change from Halifax to Cape Breton. I hadn't heard about that one. But all of these things, guys, are the things that we need to be paying attention to. So when you see a headline, no longer think of it as, just information. I want you to think of it as potential opportunity. And it's a watch and see, right? When it's a headline, it's generally still pretty early. It's a watch and see. But now, there's usually alerts that you can sign up for, email alerts or updates from the different towns or whatever, even some of the different construction. I know for us, like Bechtel is a construction company. Well, they send out updates on the infrastructure projects that they're involved in. So, it's just time to pay attention when you see those kinds of things. So let's talk about a divided highway. Oh, it's a divided highway between Halifax and Cape Breton
Yeah,
Island.
well, they were adding that in. They were working on that when we were there last fall. So absolutely, those types of things, when you can get to Cape Breton so much easier, you don't have to fight traffic. You're not, passing on a 2-lane highway. I mean, more people go that direction,
weekend
right?
getaways.
So absolutely, those types of things, like Tiff said, we need to start
Sorry.
paying attention to them as investors.
Yeah.
As investors,
Change your mindset.
they can really have a dramatic effect on our pocketbook and how long we may keep a property and how well our property performs if we're paying attention to those types of announcements. And like Tiff said, one of the things that we got to be very careful of, though, is we don't want to buy something based on a news article or an announcement. I was thinking here in Edmonton, one of the big announcements, and it actually did happen, but it was of an Amazon warehouse in Southwest Edmonton or Southeast Edmonton, and something like that employs maybe 500 to 1,000 people.
I think it's 1,400.
Yeah, it's
if I remember right.
it's going to be not only employing the people working there, but all the couriers going to and from, and all of those sorts of things. That has a dramatic effect. When a big business like that comes in, Costco, somebody mentioned, or IKEA, those types of things, when those get built, yes, people want to be close by that. It brings jobs. And as real estate investors, that's what we're looking for.
So that's kind of getting into our next topic there of infrastructure. So some of these things are like infrastructure. Okay, so Walmarts and all that kind of stuff, but some things, remember when we were looking up in Northeast Edmonton?
Yep.
Okay, so why don't you tell them about that? It's weird. It's really weird.
Yeah. So, one of the other things was, this was back in probably 2010 or so, somewhere in there. Anyway, we were doing a presentation, and it was on a hot neighborhood in Edmonton at the time. And the neighborhood that we chose to be that hot neighborhood was Castle Downs neighborhood. And so for those of you that are familiar with Edmonton, it's up in the northwest section of Edmonton. But one of the things that we noticed that was happening there at the time was they were digging up all the roads, and they were expanding the sewer system. They were expanding the water lines. They were expanding that. Why?
Why? Okay, why? Why are they expanding sewer systems, guys? Why are they doing that in certain areas? What does that mean? Why is the government investing money in the sewer systems? Why is the government investing money in new hospitals, in new schools, in new communities, like transportation to new communities, new overpasses, new and easier ways to get off and on different freeways, highways? Why are they doing this? Yeah, hey, the birds are so pretty. Come on, guys. Why are they doing this? Densification. There we go. There we
Planning
go.
for expansion.
Planning for expansion.
Exactly.
Now, if our governments, guys, are investing millions, if not billions of dollars in these areas, in these communities, do you think it maybe would be a clue that we could look at it? Doesn't mean that we're going to do it. Doesn't mean that we're all in. But if they're investing millions or billions or whatever it might be, could that be, hey, they may be expecting people. People pay rent. People buy houses. People are who we serve. So do we want to go where the people are? Population growth.
And that's the thing
Awesome,
about,
awesome.
in that instance, when we were looking at Castle Downs, for example, the putting in new sewer systems, we were saying at the time, this is a great neighborhood to be buying in at the time. Why? Because all the neighborhoods around it, because of these new sewer systems, it's going to have population growth. There's going to be new stores and businesses moving in, and they need the capacity to be able to handle all of that. And so when all of that new stuff comes in, that ups the value of the areas around it. So if you buy in the areas that are close to the expansion, then their values get a prop up because of all the new stuff being built around it. So
let me ask you, like what he just said is when those new areas open, right? But when is the time to be looking at them? Is it once they've opened? So let's say that we get a new LRT line in our chosen market, and it's announced in 2022. It'll probably be open by 2025, 2026. Now it's announced in 2022. It gets signed on the dotted line in 2023. 2024, it starts building. People in 2024, what are they thinking when they go near that area, near that transit hub? What are they thinking? Are they thinking, woohoo, this is awesome, my house is going up in value? No, they're thinking, bloody, get out of my way, the traffic's crazy, the construction. People are not thinking of buying 2 years ahead of opening. But guys, after it's been signed and before it's open, and even in that frustrating time, the neighborhood, the people that are living there are getting irritated with the 2 years of traffic and congestion and
sometimes
smog.
5-10 years of construction.
They're sick of it by that point. Well, guess what? Guess what that creates? That creates opportunity for us, right? Right. All right, 2028. I'm being a little optimistic, perhaps.
I think so.
Well, I actually read one today that so it was announced 2021 and it should be done in 2026, and that's for our area.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty good.
That's really fast.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So we've talked already about transportation changes and the ripple effect that will have in creating transitional areas for us. So in those transitional areas, we're going next door, right? We're not right where the pin drops. We've talked about infrastructure and how if government and industry is investing in an area, would we want to? That goes for, everything from Walmarts and Costco's and Amazon's and McDonald's and churches and hospitals and arenas, all of those kinds of things. Look at it as you read an announcement. Now, what will the effect on that neighborhood be? And is that going to be positive? Is that already hit? Is it, what is it going to do in your portfolio if you're in that area? So the thing is too, let's add this. Sorry, I don't know how to do this. That okay. Oh, I missed saying that, so that's okay. This is one of my favorite quotes. Now, you guys have probably heard this before. So, good old Warren Buffett. We simply attempt to be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy only when others are fearful. So, we have to be that lime in a box of lemons. We have to be different, guys. We can't be doing the same thing that everybody else is doing when we're investing. And here's why. Right now, we know that most people aren't investing, right? We are a small segment of the population. But even within, let's say, the investment world, we all have to kind of trench out our own direction. If we don't, we would end up all with the same properties, looking for the same renter that has the same income, and we would all end up in trouble. So we all have to create our own opportunity. So that, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. Back in 2015, 2016, it was like my mantra pretty much. And I was like, you guys, there's so much fear in Alberta right now. Come to Alberta. Come to Alberta. Now, is it scary? Because for one, it might be far out of town investing. For two, Alberta's in a slump. Why would we be going to Alberta in a slump? Where are we going to get renters? All of those scary things come up. But if you had bought in that slump, wouldn't you be happy now that things have started to rise? So look at markets where there's fear. If there's a lot of greed,
it's another good indicator for sure.
It's another good indicator, yeah. If you're looking in a market that there's a lot of greed in, and it's just, like everyone's just scrounging to get everything that they can out of it, that too, to me, is an indicator that I don't want anything to do with it. I'm a little bit fearful when I see that. So let's go back to this just to give it another moment. In his investing, when people ask him, what's your gauge? And certainly there's way more involved than this, but one of the most successful investors in the world, we simply attempt to be fearful when others are greedy, and to be greedy only when others are fearful. So don't follow the crowds.
When the masses have fear in something, that actually can be an opportunity for us. And that's kind of, a change in mindset that we're trying to get across here, is that when it comes to buying in a particular market, is everyone else buying there? If everyone else is buying there, then maybe we might want to be a little fearful. Is it a market where a few people are buying in and it shows good promise? We see some ripple effect happening, some transportation changes happening. Maybe we see it's close to a market that's doing really well and is going to benefit from that ripple. Is there infrastructure changes happening in there? Are they expecting population growth? But maybe there's not too many. It's not a big stampede to go and buy in that particular market right now. Some people still have fear. That's the type of market that we should, as real estate investors, be interested in. Because as Warren Buffett said, as Tiff's been talking about, when there's fear in the general population, that's when, and we don't want to be greedy, that's not what we're saying, but that's where we have an opportunity to take advantage, to get into the market, to buy something, to then see the results of that over time.
So guys, we're going to talk as we wrap up here, we're going to talk about one last thing here is we are fearless investors, right? That's what we are. We are fearless investors. How do we become fearless? We become fearless by education, by empowerment, by understanding, knowledge, education. Okay. That's how we become fearless. But put in the chat, guys, let's be honest. Let's be really raw for a minute. What freaks you out about that thought? I'm going to go into an area of transition. So I'm going to have high vacancies and not the best tenant demographic. I'm going to go into an area where there's no LRT, which means people don't realize yet that they want that area. So I'm going to have a harder time for 2 or 3 years. I'm going to go into an area that is, has a lot of fear. So it might be a flat market, or, people are not buying. It is not a seller's market, it's a buyer's market. What kinds of things go through your mind when you think that? Like Karen, you're like, interesting. It is such a fine line, right? You're like, interesting, right? It's like, it makes you think. But there's also things that make you go, you know what? Sheesh, that's scary. And that's, again, not what most people will be doing. So what kinds of things, guys? Throw it in the chat. What kinds of things? Oh, hey, Cindy. There is potential. I'm going to throw out some of the things that I know that not only did we think, but we talked to people, and people say this all the time. In fact, I was talking to one couple that bought a duplex, and they're transitioning it into a fourplex, and it's awesome. It's going to be great, but it's not in the best area. However, guess what? There's LRT lines that are going to be going right in there. So transportation changes are huge. They're right on a major thoroughfare. There's a freeway right around them that's now being doubled right now as we speak. So great, great opportunity, but a little scary. So low cash flow. Exactly. The rents haven't gone up for them yet. They're not in that already ripple. They're in an area that is going to be affected by that, right? Negativity from others. That's a good one, Karen. Yeah. People going, what, are you crazy? Right? Fear that it will not be 3 to 5, but maybe 10 years of waiting. Yes. Awesome. Because we don't know. And there are delays, right? So okay, Heather, good question. And I'll get to that in just one half a second. All right. Vacancies. These are, again, yeah, these are our fears. Oh, hey, Nicole. So guys, when we have these things, again, what do we do as fearless investors? We turn to, one, having an awesome team in place. Okay, so who are our property managers? Are they tried? Are they tested? Are they true? Okay, are they long-term successful? How are our reserve funds? Are we putting away 3 months of vacancy, but we're going to have 5 years in an area of transition, or 3 years? And we only have 3 months of vacancy? Sure, that's a good standard. That's a good standard for the most part. But when we're buying tougher, do we have to plan tougher?
And here's the thing, guys. We're not saying go and buy somewhere where it doesn't make financial sense. And we're not saying go and buy somewhere where because it's not booming. That's not what we're saying. But what we're saying here is some of the factors that we want to take into account when it comes to choosing a market that we're going, or a neighborhood that we're going to buy in, or whatever it might be, is we want to be a little bit fearful when it's going crazy. Okay. But when it's not going crazy, and when there's opportunities and there's buying opportunities, we can buy something and actually cash flow. We can buy something and we can see that there's a transportation change nearby. We can buy something and the vacancy rate is still low, and it's going to cash flow, and there's a transportation change, and maybe there's a new arena being built. And when we start adding all of these things, these are all ingredients to a good pie. We can't have a really good pie with just crust and nothing in it. But when we start adding in all the different ingredients, it becomes amazing, right? And the more of those ingredients that you add in, the more amazing it can become. And so these are all little things that we want to just keep in the back of our mind when we are choosing a market. Because and we talked about this at the beginning of our last boot camp, guys, is we talked about how to choose a market, how to choose a property within that, a neighborhood within that market, and then a property within that neighborhood. And there's so many factors to be considering, but some of the ones that we're talking about tonight are extra ingredients that can just make it that much better. It can make that property perform really well long term. We can actually,
it just takes out the highs and lows.
Yeah, and what it does too is it actually gives us an opportunity to buy something. For those of you out there that have been looking or have been purchasing in markets that are going crazy, and it's multiple offers, and
or you just are starting out, you don't have much.
Yeah, you can't buy anything. Well, what we're saying is maybe we should start looking where there's a little more fear, when the market's not going as crazy, and then there's opportunity for us to actually do something.
Yeah, absolutely. So in conclusion, our point of it is that these are all places of opportunity. However, the fear that comes is going to be more. It's going to be higher. So, if it's about team members, you need a team member in that area, put an ask in Fearless and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a property manager in this area." If it's, vacancies like Leo mentioned, like, yeah, that's my biggest fear when I'm thinking about doing something in an area that's yet up and coming, has huge potential. I know that that wave is headed there, but I know that it's going to be a little tough in the meantime. I I like to have a bigger reserve. And for me, that takes the emotions out. If that reserve is there and I know, okay, look, I don't have 3 months worth of vacancies put aside, I have a year worth of vacancies put aside. Well, guess what? Now I feel a lot more empowered. So, Heather, you asked such a good question. I'm just going to come back to it. How do you pay investors if it's not going to cash flow for a few years? So, interestingly, Heather, which we learned the hard way, not everyone is looking for or needing cash flow. So don't always assume. We went into so many meetings with partners saying, oh, cash flow this, cash flow that, and we were always talking about cash flow. And finally one of them said, and then since then many said, I actually don't want cash flow. I have enough like personal income. I don't want cash flow. I just want this for later in my life.
Mhm.
So for one, don't assume that it's always about cash flow. For two, you can factor in lower cash flow. So you can say, like, this is what our rents are now, and this is what we're expecting for the first 2 to 3 years, and therefore we don't expect a lot of cash flow. Plus, we're going to add into our reserve fund from the cash flow every month. So again, our cash flow is going to be low. However, our
Because of these transportation changes, maybe because of that LRT station that's going to be built a few years from now, or because of that overpass
that's
that is
opening
going to
up.
make it closer to the downtown core or closer to where everybody works,
Maybe all the
that is going to give
infills.
us an extra increase in our value, and it's going to up our rent at that time. So those can be things that come at some point down the road, and you can be planning for them to come at some point down the road because you've seen that ripple coming, or you've seen the construction of those things happening.
So kind of in the same way, Heather, that we would present like a BRRRR opportunity where we would say, so here's how it sits today, and that's fine. But what we're going to do is we're going to make it better, and we're going to make it look like this. And so you're giving comparative numbers. This is our after repaired value, and this is our before repaired value. It's kind of the same thing with properties. It's like, this is what we're expecting the numbers to be right now. However, based on these things that we do believe, though cannot guarantee, of course, you would never guarantee this stuff, is that we will see an increase in values. We'll see an increase in rents to about this. This is what's happening in the neighborhood beside it. This is what happened in the neighborhood, across from it recently. All of those things. So, do you guarantee cash flow or say that you'll pay it if there isn't any? No, of course you wouldn't, and you don't even have to. You'll be surprised how, people are in,
Yeah,
if
most
you
most
can
people are
explain
buying
why.
real estate not necessarily for the cash flow. The cash flow is to keep you in long term. It's to pay all of your expenses so that you can own that property long enough for the mortgage to be paid down and long enough for it to go up in value. That's really what the cash flow is for. And hey, if there's extra cash flow that can be divided up between you and your investor, or extra cash flow that you get to keep, then that's gravy. That's bonus. But the cash flow is really to cover all of your expenses. That's kind of the purpose of it.
Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. So thanks guys for joining us. That'll wrap up another Tactical Tuesday this
So
week.
yeah, hopefully you got some points out of this. And as you drive to work, or as you're driving around, or maybe you go on vacation and you're driving, or whatever it might be, keep your eyes open for some of these things that are happening. Or maybe you're reading the news and some announcements are coming through about large infrastructure changes occurring, or a new airline coming to your area, or whatever the case may be. All these things that we talked about today, as they happen, make a mental note of them, that maybe these are areas that we should check out. And maybe if you're not in the buying stage, you're just in the research stage, watch what happens over the next year, over the next 2 years to those areas. Do they get a bit of an uplift? Do they perform better than other areas because of what just happened? And the longer you start watching these things happening, you're gonna see, you're gonna start to build that belief that and your fear will go down. You'll become more fearless when it comes to seeing how this can affect real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when we look at stuff, we see opportunity. When we used to look at it, we saw opportunity, but with kind of trepidation. Like, I don't know. It kind of brought on anxiety. Now it's just excitement.
Yeah.
So that comes with time, and it comes with experience in seeing things work out time and time again. Right. So yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. All right, guys.
Okay, guys, thanks for joining us this week. Hopefully you grabbed some good points out of that, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Another Tactical
Yes,
Tuesday,
and we
and
will
we'll
see
see
all of our Igniteds over in our laser session.
pitch practice tonight.
Yes, that'll be exciting, and we'll see you there,
And
guys.
go
Take care.
Oilers, go! Yes,
Yes.
we were supposed to be wearing our jerseys. I forgot.
Yes, the Oiler game
Darn
starts
it.
in like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, there's
okay.
Chad. He's like all over it. Don't worry. We'll be cheering with you.
Yes.
Okay, guys. Cheers, everyone.
All right. See you guys.